Welcome to the In Focus podcast, where we dive into the amazing stories of photographers and videographers. This week, we're joined by Chelsey Constanzi. Chelsey has a heart for ministry and also creating amazing photos that her couples are going to love. Not only that, she's a mom and a wife. Let's take a look at her journey from behind the lens. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing well.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about yourself.
So, my name is Chelsey. I own Chelsey Constanzi Photography, and I am married to my husband, Billy. He's great. If you see me tagging a Sam on Facebook, it's not a different guy. That's actually his government name. So it's so funny because people are like, so you say your husband is Billy, but you tag a Sam and everything. I'm like, it's the same guy. So that's a fun fact. But we have two little girls. So Aria is 7 and Lexi is 4. The highlights of my life, they're great. I love being a girl mom. And then I work part-time in ministry at Church of the King in Baton Rouge. I work in our children's department, and I love both of my jobs. It's great.
What does that involve doing?
So I am technically part-time childcare, but I assist our children's director. Her name is Allison. I assist her in just making sure everything's prepped for Sundays. I help a lot, like whenever it's leading up to Vacation Bible School, just because, it's honestly not something that can just be done in like a month. Like, it takes a lot of like prepping and getting to like the end result. So I help a lot with that. And then on Wednesday nights, we have small groups at our church, and we offer childcare for the people who are going to small groups. So I actually kind of run that part, and like I make the curriculum for Wednesday nights, and our childcare team, I help manage them and make sure everybody's there and everybody's doing what they need to do. And so that's pretty much my job.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, let's get into it. How did you get started in photography?
So I was in a wedding back in like 2017, and a photographer was there, and I was just like, this is really cool, like what he does, I hadn't been in a wedding since I was like a kid. I've been to weddings, but you don't really, unless you're in the bridal party, you don't really see like the photographer much. Like, you don't notice them, you know what I mean? At least that's my experience. And being in the bridal party, I was like, this is like super cool. This seems like a really fun job.
Yeah, let me just pull my eyelashes out in the middle of a podcast, a video podcast. That's fun. Then you kind of honed your chops a little bit.
Right. Well, here's the thing with that too, though. Like, you can second shoot and like shadow someone a lot, but I really believe that education is vital in this business. Absolutely. So like, I ended up failing all those years ago, so yeah, it was about 5 years ago. So I started a photography business, but I knew nothing about like what camera I needed. And I didn't know I could ask those questions because I was so nervous. I feel like we're getting to an age where like photographers are like more open to sharing than what it used to be. But in the past, it's been like kind of like I was scared to ask. I didn't want like to be like, I didn't know that gatekeeping or something, I don't know.
Well,
but
what's interesting is that one of the things you find the longer you do this is that competition happens at the bottom and collaboration happens at the top.
100%.
Like, I'm not in competition with anybody. Like other videographers, I'm like, do your thing, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you'll either stick around and get close with the people who are really doing it. And one thing, and this is from a videographer standpoint, I'm a contractor who's a contractor hired by another contractor who was then done with another contractor. Like, it's all like we're all eating, but I got hired by a company in California the other day for another agency who then hired me out. So it's like that, like,
I had the same thing happen recently. I did a wedding for Encompass.
Yep,
yeah.
It's very common and that's actually how you know you're doing it, because they like your work. Like, they're not just, whatever. So there's a lot of that. And I think building those connections with people and being like, hey, look, we're all in this together. Like, we're all trying to.
Right.
And I think that's what's one of the cool thing about this podcast is that I didn't know it would do this, but it's kind of bringing the community together. So we're not gatekeeping. Like, we want to talk about it. Like, we want to be able for you to talk about your brand, my brand, their brand, all that,
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm really excited about that. I think that this inadvertently turned into something really cool, and I didn't mean for it to. It was just like, I should do a podcast because why not?
Right.
I have a studio.
Well,
So
the super cool thing. So, like my first camera, it was a D3200
nice.
crop sensor Nikon. I knew nothing about it. So, and I didn't know why my images didn't look good. And it was because I had kit lenses and I was too scared to ask anybody anything.
Yes.
So,
Excellent.
so you know what? I give it up. I put it down. I become a preschool teacher for a little while because I love kids. I work in ministry with kids. So, and then I am the preschool teacher of Kate McMullen's son. And
Interesting.
so I meet Kate, who
Okay.
Saved by Grace Photography. So I meet Kate and we become friends. We become friends. And she taught me everything I needed to know. I really do give her a lot of credit for like where I am because I wouldn't know anything if it wasn't for her. So between her and KJ Education, that's really what set me up for success.
Yeah, and it was interesting. And on my side of that, like Complete Weddings and Events,
Mm-hmm.
I went to them. I had started my own company, and I was like, oh well, I'll use them to just fill in the gaps
Mm-hmm.
for weddings. But they're just such great people. Like they all have experience in like film and all these different things. We do mock weddings every quarter, where we set up a fake wedding and we do angles and we do cameras and where we should be,
Like
how
a
we
styled
should do
shoot.
it. Yeah, yeah, and we have the whole staff there to like do this, and it's all planned out, and so it's really good to like practice that. And there's a lot of practicing, reviewing footage, reviewing photos to make sure that we're giving the clients exactly what they want. And that was attractive to me. I was like, I want that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of the same deal.
Yeah.
Like you get mentored under somebody.
Yeah.
Now, talking about the kit lenses, would it have been, if you could go back, would it be body or would it be lens that you spend the most money on? What would you have invested in? This is always a very interesting question, I think.
So I'm a nifty 50 kind of girl. Sure. And that's like, a couple $100. So obviously the body is going to be more expensive.
Got it.
So going back, just starting, I would have gotten the nifty 50. If I had known whatever that was, you know what I mean? Yeah. 5-6 years ago, I would have gotten that first on my crop sensor, and then I would have saved every penny I had to get a full frame camera. And I'm glad that I did do that, whenever I became friends with Kate and everything. My first purchase was a full frame and a 50.
What do you shoot with now? So
I actually have a Canon EOS R that I shoot with like for regular sessions. But for weddings, I use lens rentals. And I actually get a Canon R6 and I rent it just for the wedding. And this is something I do for weddings because it has a dual camera slot. I have my backup Canon R, and I'm actually going to be purchasing an R6 soon. But I wanted to test out the R6 before really because there's mixed reviews on everything,
Yeah, and can I do want to give a shout out to Lens Rental. You should sponsor me. That I too get all my stuff for commercial work. I get it from Lens Rental, and during commercial work, that's when I test.
Good.
They're amazing.
Their customer service is like.
They have customer service that you just can't beat. So I highly recommend Lens Rental.
Sponsor him.
I love Lens Rental. They're great. And like there was a situation where we needed a flash for a conference that we were shooting, and we didn't have it. They shipped it overnight to us in Florida.
Wow.
And we went and picked it up from a FedEx. Like, it saved my butt. So, like, super thankful for that. So, I love Lens Rental. I love to test out gear with there. I test out lenses when I'm looking into doing that. So, I think that's great.
Yeah.
And props to you for getting an R6. I think that's great.
Yes. Super excited.
Yeah, and I definitely think the dual.
You have to have it for weddings.
You absolutely have to have it. And I'd heard horror stories before I ever got into weddings, so I never crossed that bridge off the bat. I had automatically did that, and that was super important, I think, because like you ever lost footage?
I have not.
Good for you.
I have not.
I have not either. Nor do I want to.
No.
And this is what prevents that. I mean, it's a very unlikely that both cards are going to corrupt. I mean, again, that's just so unlikely, and that's why they have that. So cool. So, how would you describe your style and your approach to photography?
So I feel like my style is I wouldn't say it's like very light and airy because I am more like I'm not as light and airy, like I don't like my pictures to look like too blown out.
Sure.
So it's more like true to life, but like I love like the light and airy like feel and look to it. And I like adding in like creamy tones, and I want your image to be timeless. Like I don't want you to look at it 20 years from now and be like, "Oh, that was the style back then." You know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
I just really like
Yeah.
trying to stick to something that they will love forever, and it not just be like a phase or
I
anything.
love that. That's great, and I like the creamy tone. So you're
That's so pretty.
definitely Lightroom type deal. How about them new features in Lightroom? Huh? Amazing.
Oh my gosh.
AI.
Denoise Catholic weddings.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah, I mean, you're not allowed to use flash, and it's some of them are just so dark. And I mean, there's only so much that our little cameras
tell you horror
and we can do.
Tell you horror stories about that. I'm not. Gonna Craziest wedding stories. Let's talk about. Let's just get get rid of this. I want to talk about crazy stuff.
All right, I have a good recent one, and I actually talked to the bride this morning, and I was like, I'm just like, I'm gonna be on a podcast, and and she was like, tell it, because it really was crazy.
Spill the beans. All right.
So, the bride, she's sweet. I love her. Her wedding, there's a lot of things there's things that go wrong at every wedding.
Sure.
But this bride she had a rough go, and it was my goal that whole wedding just to be like, I want to be the vendor that she's like, you didn't let me down, you know what I mean? And like so far she's told me that was, so it's great. But the cake. So the cake was supposed to be there at, I don't remember the exact time, so let's just say it was 1:00.
Mm-hmm.
So say, because I don't remember the exact
Sure.
time, but let's say it was supposed to be there at 1. 1:30 rolls around, and the uncle of the bride, who was like, doing like, he's a florist in like Chicago, I think, or something. He's great. He's like, he didn't want to tell the bride that the cake wasn't there yet. And he's been trying to contact the cake lady. Okay. Ends up the cake lady wasn't a real business. Like it wasn't like, she's not like a actual business. She does do cakes, but she's not like, whatever. But anyways, so he doesn't know like who to talk to, I don't think, in a such scenario. So I'm a listening ear, and he comes up to me, he's like, the cake isn't there. So like for 3 hours we're trying to figure out where this cake is. There was points in time where only me and him knew, and like we were like looking at each other like, is it here yet? I don't know. Is it there yet? I don't know. It got back to the bride's parents, and they figured it out. So like, everyone's like stressing. I'm pretty sure the bride figured it out at some point. The cake was not there yet. 3 hours later, the wedding cake is there. The groom's cake had collapsed. No groom's cake at all. And I mean, it was just like a really crazy. It was just crazy, and like no refunds given, like nothing. So like that's super crazy. So that was just like a really wild like experience that I got to see like at a wedding. A really funny story was a few weeks ago. I had a wedding, and it was in Broussard. So, we're there. I get there, and the bride and her bridesmaids had drank all the champagne and wine. So we're about to go do like, the champagne pictures with PJs and all that good stuff. And they're like, oh, we don't have any champagne. So I'm sitting here with the bride's mom. I'm like, I could hop across that bar, and I could, I could jump really high and get across that bar and get a bottle of champagne. I was like, but I don't know if like they would ever allow me to photograph here ever again if I did that. So like, I'm thinking all these different thoughts, and then the bride's mom was like, wait, the cousin of like the owner or whatever is right here. Let's ask. So like I asked her, I'm like, would you be okay? Would your family who owns this venue be okay if I hopped across this bar right now and grab champagne, because everything was locked,
Yeah.
And she was like, I'm gonna say it's okay. I was like, so I have your consent right now. I hopped across that bar, and that bar, like, I'm very short. I'm 4'11", and it was probably to your chest.
Oh wow.
So I'm like, on a chair, like getting over there, hopping across there. And, I grabbed what we needed and, it was great.
I got trained.
It was great. Yeah. Yeah. So that's like
Oh,
2 funny stories like recently
that's
that,
the best.
yeah.
That's the best. What's the worst experience you've ever had at a wedding?
I don't know if I've had like any like terrible like experiences. I really don't have like many like negative like stories. Probably like the most like negative story I can probably think of was it was at a Catholic ceremony one time and I wasn't educated on where I could and could not go at this particular church, and I stepped onto the brick that was around the altar, and that's apparently a very big no-no.
I'm real big, like when I go to a Catholic ceremony, the first thing I do is find the priest. Usually I'll find the coordinator there and I say, hey, what can I do to make sure that I'm respecting your holy house?
Right.
And I had a lady, she was like, don't fly your drone in here. And I was like, what?
When
was
would
like,
I ever do that?
Am I Ray Roman? I'm not going to fly a drone in here. Like, are you kidding me? She's like, no, someone did that. So then she could tell she had some PTSD. And I was like, ma'am, I'm not going to do all that. Like, I'm here to like keep the focus on the bride and the groom. I'm not here to,
Whew. Yeah.
So I don't know.
No, that was a learning experience for me because from now on, like, I make sure I speak to whoever's in charge of like the weddings there, or even like if I can't find someone, like if I see the priest in the back, I'll go up to and like respectfully say, like, let me know like what I'm not allowed to do.
Right.
Because I don't want to disrespect your church. I don't want to disrespect you, because there's some Catholic churches that do allow flash and there's a lot that don't. So that's like my first question is like, am I allowed to use my flash in here? Because I don't want to do anything that, is disrespectful.
They sometimes don't want you in the middle aisle during the ceremony.
Yeah.
This, that, and the other. Sometimes they do the first kiss in the middle of the ceremony. That's fun. I enjoy that. That's fun for me.
Yeah, it's actually not because then I'm running. I'm like, I did not know that was gonna happen.
Yes. It's fun. Yeah. So we can go. Probably making. What essential gear recommendations for photographers would you give?
Essential gear. So Canon R6, nifty 50, a 35. Everyone who's a wedding photographer needs a 35. I have actually been renting, and after my R6 purchase, I'm going to purchase a, it's not a 24 to 70, it's a 28 to 70. It's the RF lens. It's huge, it's heavy, but it's so great.
Let's see.
It's bigger than that.
2470, and this is a 2870.
Yeah, I'll have to show you a picture of me. Like my profile picture on Facebook is me holding it. It's so big, but it's the mirrorless, like
the DGD.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. But it's huge, but it's so good and it's so worth it. But so that would be like my 3 like lenses and my camera body. Also the Godox V1 flash, game changer. It's great.
Magmod. Magmod?
I don't use Magmod. I use just the dome that comes with the V1. It's the round flash. Yeah. So I use that, and then on my 2 off-camera flashes, those are just bare.
Yeah, and I think so. What are your off-camera flashes?
They're V1s.
They're V1s also.
Yeah.
So and
V1s all the way.
And you just let them be assistants. Don't use that other word.
Yeah, and sometimes like I don't use both of them. I have to just in case, but a lot of times I only use one off-camera flash, and that's really just to like brighten up the background and so it doesn't look like so flat. Yeah.
And it's for the reception. See, I think that's really interesting.
I only use them at the reception. I try my hardest not to use flash if I don't have to. Yeah, not for receptions, but like the rest of the day, like if I can find light, like I don't want to use a flash unless I have to because I really like natural like looking pictures.
Yeah, and it's tough at a reception. It's dark, So,
yeah.
And here's a fun tip for videographers out there. What I will do is I'll take like an aperture 60, and I will take it before the reception ever starts. I will put it up, get it on a C-stand, put a sandbag on it, shine it up towards the ceiling, and leave it on before the reception ever starts as a light source. So that way when people turn off the lights because they want to take over for the 99 and 2000, you know what I mean? Juvenile. when that happens, they'll be able to still have enough light in there for the camera sensors to be able to pick it up.
Yeah, no, that's really
And
smart.
Sony is notoriously good for shooting in low light, so it's not
Mhm.
that, but it just gives just enough to where it's helping everybody. But
Yeah.
I noticed that people at the reception don't ask you to turn it off because they thought it was just part of the building.
Right.
As
Yeah.
opposed to if I pull out a light and start hanging it up, they're going to go, "Can you turn that off?"
Yeah.
So I found that
Yeah.
that's a good workaround for that.
Right.
So, how do you stay inspired and how do you avoid creative burnout?
I think it's honestly like I just try my hardest to always be looking at either Pinterest or I'm a Caitlin James fan to the max. Like I constantly am like looking at her stuff. I'm a part of her like all access and like I watch her videos.
Mm.
I think watching others who have really made it in the industry inspires me the most because, you know, I love being creative and I love being artistic, but this is our job. You know, our end goal is to make money and there are seasons and in which like we don't have work, you know, like this is a hire you basis. Like we're not hourly paid, you know, we pay ourselves.
Mhm.
So, you know, like in the summer sometimes like there's a good 2 weeks where I have no work and sometimes 3 weeks.
Girl, try
And
3 months.
yeah, sometimes
Well, so and you know, for those who aren't from Louisiana, so June, July, August, maybe even September are
Yeah.
the dead months here
Yeah.
because it's just so hot that
Yeah.
no one wants to get married.
because fire from hell rains down
Yes.
on Louisiana.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
God's country. So then you have October, November, December, January, February, peak wedding seasons.
Yeah.
I'm just coming out of that now where I'm finally starting to slow down. I can't wait till February. I've had a wedding every weekend for like
Yes.
so many months, which is good, and I'm thankful for that.
great.
But it's you know now it's like all right, we're through the season,
For sure.
you know. So that's kind of the rotation. So yeah, and then you know just to kind of speak what you were saying. So
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. How do you engage with and how do you support local photographers in your area?
Well, like I was saying, with me not having like the best like education like in the beginning and kind of like feeling like I failed, I don't want other photographers like starting out to ever feel that way.
Totally.
So I'm a part of like a lot of Facebook groups, and when photographers ask questions, like if I can help them, I will. You know what I mean? And like even like my friends in the industry that are kind of like on the same like level and like playing field, like we help each other. You know, it's not like we're like, oh, I can't tell you that. I'm gatekeeping that because if you know, it's never competition. It's always for me. It's always just like I want to help you. You know, because there's enough people for everybody. There's enough weddings
There is.
for everyone.
We're all eating.
Yeah.
And it's funny, those same people, if they're really doing it, they'll come back around a few years later and
Mhm.
they'll ask you to help them with something or
Yeah.
they'll say, hey, I'm not available. Can you do this? And
Mhm.
that's, I think, you know, and of course, that's what God calls us to do is to like love each other, is, you know.
Oh, for
all that.
sure.
So,
For sure.
and I think that's super important. I try
Yeah.
and a lot of the times, especially in like videography, there's times where I've always kind of had the philosophy of like, how do I honor God? How do I honor God and how do I honor the person that I'm dealing with in the best way? Because you always want to make sure you're not ever throwing anybody under the
Right.
bus accidentally. Like sometimes those
Yeah.
things happen, so I try and have some discernment about like what I'm doing when
For
I'm doing
sure.
these kind of things.
Yeah. And like whenever you know, me and two of my friends, Michelle Charrier and Tori Savoy, we're in a group message, and every day like we're constantly like talking to each other about like ideas and, you know, what's a good location for this, and oh, I'm struggling with this is what a client told me and it's a really hard situation, like can you guys help me with this? And there's no gatekeeping, you know what I mean? Like we're just friends, we all do the same thing and we love it and we love each other, you know. We just want to be a good friend for each other, and I feel like you said, like that's what God calls us to do. God doesn't call us to sit back and hold back the gifts that he's given us, because at the end of the day, without the Lord giving you the gift of being creative, you wouldn't be a photographer.
Right.
So if he's given you a gift, you're not supposed to sit back and be like, oh, this is my gift that the Lord gave me.
Right.
You're supposed to go out and share that, you know, so others can go out and do his work too. Because what I've learned about photography and ministry, they're not separate for me. photography is a part of my ministry because there's been brides who I've had to pray with before they walk down the aisle. There's brides who have called me after their wedding months later that are like, because they know I work in ministry. They're like, I'm dealing with this really hard thing right now, and I really just need you to pray for me. And honestly, like, I'm just so thankful that God has given me not only the ministry at my church platform, but also the platform of photography and social media to also spread like his love and, you know, what he's done in my life, because it's impacting others. And I believe that anything that you do as a Christian, like anything that you do needs to be for him, because earth is not our home, heaven's our home. And like anything I do, I pray that anything I do in my life, like it just gets like pointed to him. I don't want any platform that I'm on or anything that I do to point back to, oh, Chelsey did this, Chelsey accomplished this. No, God did that for me in my life.
Right. He made this possible.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
And I think a lot of people come in and they see the studio and all the gear and they're like, oh, you did that. And I'm like, dude, God did this. Like, because I am just every day I show that I do not know what is best for my life, but he does. So like, I try and let him do that. And that goes with like honoring people. And I think that's what's so interesting about how this podcast kind of turned into this opportunity to like highlight other people, as opposed to like, yeah, sure, we're doing it in my studio, like, whatever. But it's like we get to talk about you. Yeah. And I get to kind of just sit back and get to hear your story a little bit, which I think is great. Like,
I love that.
Yeah, I think it's cool. So it ended up, I didn't originally intend for it to be like that, but then God just kind of made it that way. And he was like, no, you should, keep making
His plans are always better than ours, man.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
So,
no, I just left work at the church, and this morning I told you when I came in here, I was nervous. I've never done anything like this before, but I woke up and the enemy was just like, your voice sounds weird. So I'm like recording myself talking, listening to it, and like looking at myself talking in the mirror, and I go into work and I told Allison, she's the pastor's wife, also a children's director, and she leads me. She's like discipling me. So I go in there and I'm like, I'm really nervous about this podcast I'm gonna be on, sister. And she was like, let's pray about it right now. And she just helped remind me that that anything that I do, the enemy is gonna be like, oh, it's gonna be terrible. So I knew then that this was a good thing and this is right where I should be, because if the enemy's trying to tear me down about it, it's right where I need to be sitting. So,
but luckily he's a really good microphone, so like you'll sound
awesome.
It's like a richness to your voice, which I really love. So,
like Mariah Carey, awesome.
Absolutely. Well, sing us a little bit. While
Absolutely not.
All I want for Christmas.
I only sing for king's kids.
That's right.
Not adults.
Rapid fire round.
Ooh, sweet.
Favorite local area to shoot in?
The Myrtles.
Myrtles.
Free. It's free.
It's free.
And it's beautiful.
Where's that located at?
St. Francisville.
The Myrtles. Best time of day?
Golden hour.
Always a golden hour. Your go-to camera and lens combination? Nifty 50, Nikon Z6?
No. I'm a Canon R6.
Got it right.
Canon R6.
Right, Ken.
Yeah, Ken. I'm just kidding.
Top tip for editing photos effectively?
Take your time. If I know like everyone hates this advice, but like if you get to a point where you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't get this picture look right, step away, go do something else, come back to it tomorrow, because it's going to be there tomorrow. And it's just like, you can't sit there and like look at it, because you might come back tomorrow and be like, oh, I actually really like that picture. You know what I mean? And it didn't look terrible. When your eyes are looking at a screen forever, like it's, whatever.
Yeah, I just ordered some blue blockers.
Yeah.
Because of having to stare at the screen.
I don't like those, because I feel it might just be like me, but I feel like it might make the pictures like look different.
You have to get really good blue blockers.
Yeah.
You have to get like the like whatever the company is, I don't know, at least $100 pair.
Yeah.
Because they have the specialed, because otherwise you can get the yellow ones and it's just like, it will absolutely change the way your photo looks. So
yeah. Also, don't just get presets and think your pictures are going to look good. Like, I had to learn how to manually edit before I started using presets, because I incorporated presets, but a preset's not going to, fix a picture and make it look good. You have to know how to like manually edit and like know what to look at when you're editing and what needs to be fixed.
Absolutely.
So
Love that. Okay, well, I think we covered it.
yeah.
How can people find you? Do you want to throw out some tags?
All right.
We'll make sure we put them in the comments. But yeah, how can people find you?
Yep. You can find me on Facebook or Instagram, Chelsey Constanzi Photography. My website is www.chelseaconstanziphotography.com. And my name is spelled with a Y, so Chelseey when you're spelling Chelsea. So, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, and make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast so you can hear more great stories as we dive behind the camera. That didn't make sense, what I just said. Anyway.
When we dive behind the camera?
Behind the camera, when I dive into the fountain with my camera.
Just jump in, like...
Chelsey, thank you so much for coming in today.
You.
See, that was quick and painless.
Yeah.
It was not hard.
Did I do okay?
It was great.
Okay.
We'll see y'all next time.